Well, let's see how they took to what they did already at All In. I like that they opened the show with at least give me some reason to continue watching. If they'd opened it with some of the matches they had, I would have mentally shut down. But we got the real world championship on the line first out of the gate with Samoa Joe versus Lack Mussolini, Goozle Jack Perry.
Oh,
So the fans were singing, and the big it's clobbering time. Punk got a big ovation, and again, you heard a lot of people singing the song because the UK wants to see stars. They're deprived of the live events as we've talked about, so they're there. The fucking atmosphere, people ready to fucking scream and yell, and they reacted to Punk, and then as soon as the match settled in, they got firmly behind Joe and started booing Punk, and and he worked with it. I was glad to see Jim Ross on the show, and he sounded better and more energetic than we've heard him in a while.
yes, and he crapped on all the stuff I was mentally crapping on watching
Yes.
it, and it made Jim Ross the highlight of the show in a lot of ways for me.
Yes, because
And when he left the show, I should have left the show.
that's the thing is he was when he'd say I never understood this when two guys are doing something completely stupid. But he sounded better and more energetic. Of course, they switched out. If you're not paying attention and you miss the start of the match where they switch out the announcers, then you're disoriented because whose voice is. They had everybody on this show at one point in time. Taz was out there, JR. Sockface was all over it, and he was especially unbearable, as one would imagine, being as he was, I'm sure, creaming in his pants to actually be doing something that he's not very good at in front of that many people. But besides Nigel's great, and plus this was his environment. Punk came out with a shaved head and the short tights, and at the bell there was a big chant for Samoa Joe. I'm enjoying this because I didn't know at the time I was watching the match that Punk had just had a skirmish with somebody, but it just seemed like he was having more fun with being booed even than normal. And when he's doing the Hogan ear cupping, and he's just giving the people the look and encouraging it. Do you think now he was thinking, I've just had another one. They'll probably start yelling at me when I go back there again, and I'll fucking go home again. So fuck it, I'm going to come out here and have fun with Samoa Joe. You think that's what was going through his mind?
Again, the news was breaking as this match was happening, and I thought it was a joke at first, because I was like, no way, come on. Can't be every year at the same weekend or the same time period every year. And I think he knew. And I also think he's working with a guy he wants to work with, a guy he's going to enjoy working with despite getting his ass kicked in the match. And how do you not enjoy that kind of crowd reaction?
And there was a big, I know you loved he did the Terry Funk tribute when he got hung up in the ropes and got bounced up and down, upside down. And then Joe did the thing where he walks off on a guy that's trying to do a dive on him and got a huge pop for it, and then grabbed Punk and ran his head through the front of the desk. So Punk came out bleeding and had good juice. And again, benefit of being on first before all of the indie-rific outlaw fucks get a hold of the ring and bleed for no reason that won't make any money. And then they were still having the match where Joe gets heat on Punk, and Punk sells big but fights from underneath. Even though Joe was the babyface for the fans, this kind of match works because Joe can't and really shouldn't sell as a babyface. And it's still Punk. It works for Punk regardless of whether the people are behind him or not when he fights from underneath, in this instance against a big guy like that. So blah, blah, blah. Finally, Punk makes the comeback. He milks the ear. He hits the leg drop and gets a 1 count. And that was great. And then Joe starts hulking up. And the people are coming up. And they do the finger pointing. And again, it's a little homage, a little tribute, but it wasn't over the top silly. I'm not sure everybody actually picked up on it. I'm sure a lot of people did. And then Joe does the jabs, boom, 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 and the power slam, and then they're back and forth. And again, Punk does another Terry tribute with a spinning toe hold. We brought that back. And then finally, as Samoa Joe is going for the muscle buster, he nails Punk, and Punk falls to the apron. Joe tries to pick him back up to give him a superplex, but Punk foils that and hits the Pepsi plunge off the top rope. Boom, 1, 2, 3. And as soon as they hit the music, now there was a big reaction again when Punk gets his hand up. Okay, they're working with him through the match. We're going to boo you, we're going to cheer Joe, but we appreciated all of that, and we're glad to see everybody's here. And then they cheered, and they booed, and they sang, and they did all the things they wanted to do. But at least we started the show with a fucking wrestling match that actually had a story and an angle behind it, and there was no superfluous gaga, and it got over. What'd you think?
Really good match. Can't add too much more to what you said. Really good match. I like the look of everything. The ring ropes were lighter than they usually are. The ring aprons were lighter. I watched Collision after this, and everything was so dark. I mean, obviously, they have to darken a lot of the arena because of the amount of people there, but the brightness, the changing colors, and the tones.
Now, were you using products from CB Distillery at this point in time where the colors had such richer hues and the sound, it was so quadraphonic? And then, maybe that's what it was.
It wasn't that, and now our fine friends at CB Distillery don't give you anything that makes you see colors, ladies and gentlemen. That's not part of the deal.
You hear the colors.
All right, well, this isn't...
You ought to hear blue, I'll tell you.
Well, what I was going to say is I think it made a big difference, especially for a show in that building with part of the show at least being open air or partially open air. It looked more like a WrestleMania than a Dynamite.
Yes, and just because of the sea of people on the floor, if nothing else, because you never see that anymore. They were so deep and they was deep and wide. But anyway, so it was a good way to open with Punk and Joe